Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We're taking you on a journey straight into the architecture of your own mind. Today, we've got a fascinating stack of source material centered around a truly eye-opening book.
Yeah, Wisdom Through Words by Michelle Judy.
Right, which you can find out there on Amazon right now. And our entire mission for this deep dive is to explore how our vocabulary literally constructs our daily experience.
It's a remarkable text.
Yeah.
And to show just how deep we're going today, it really helps to look at the framing.
Right.
The psychological review of this book was actually conducted by a clinical psychologist, Dr. Deepak.
Which gives it so much weight.
Exactly. He analyzed the entire work strictly from a mental health and human behavior perspective.
Ah.
So we aren't just, rattling off grammar rules or public speaking tips today.
Definitely not.
We're looking at this through a psychological lens to understand how the invisible scripts we carry actually dictate our behavior, our confidence, and our connection with others.
Yeah, it's really about the psychological weight of language. And there's this anchor quote right at the beginning of the text that perfectly sets up our entire journey today.
Oh, the awareness quote.
Yes, awareness is the beginning of transformation.
So good.
It sounds almost deceptively simple on the surface, but as we get into these sources, you'll see just how profound and honestly challenging that really is in practice.
Well, it's the foundation of everything. I mean, you can't change a script you don't even realize you're reading from.
Yeah.
If you're walking around reacting to life based on a monologue playing in the background of your mind, you're essentially on autopilot.
Okay, let's unpack this concept of the unspoken language, because that autopilot is exactly where the author starts. Judy quotes Nathaniel Brandy, who says, "Awareness is the birthplace of possibility." And to actually get to that awareness, the author tried something called morning pages.
Right, Julia Cameron's concept.
Exactly, from her book, The Artist's Way. And the practice is intense, but straightforward. You wake up and immediately write 3 pages longhand every single morning.
No edits.
No edits, no filters, just whatever is spilling out of your groggy brain.
And the sheer physical act of writing without a filter is crucial here. Forcing yourself to keep the pen moving without pausing to cross things out or, make them sound smart.
Which we all try to do.
Right. You're bypassing the conscious editing brain. You're forcing the subconscious to literally empty its pockets onto the page.
And the author describes her first few pages as total chaos. I mean, she wasn't having these deep philosophical breakthroughs on day one.
Rarely happens that way.
No. She was writing out mundane grocery lists, doing those petty, passive-aggressive rewrites of old conversations.
The shower arguments.
Yes, the shower arguments. And going on these long, rambling rants about mangoes, of all things.
Mangoes.
Yeah. But then she hit this massive aha moment.
Because eventually you run out of superficial things to complain about.
Exactly. As she kept up the habit, all that superficial emotional clutter just started to clear away. Beneath the noise of the mango rants, she started noticing repeating phrases and core beliefs she didn't even realize she held.
Yeah.
And the real kicker, she realized her internal self-talk wasn't even her own voice.
That's the scary part.
She actually caught her mother's voice in her head, the exact same tone and phrasing she used to roll her eyes at when she was a teenager. It had just stealthily become her own inner narrator.
What's fascinating here is how this messy, chaotic habit of writing about mangoes actually gave birth to the book's core structural concept, the 5 A's framework. Now, while we won't unpack all 5 today, the entire system hinges entirely on that very first A, awareness. But as the author discovers, true awareness isn't just noticing what you're saying to yourself.
No, it's deeper.
It's the psychological detective work of tracing those words back to their origin.
You really have to interrogate the voice.
Precisely. True awareness is pausing and asking, where did that come from? Is that even my voice?
Yeah.
Do I actually believe this, or am I just parroting a script I was handed 20 years ago?
That is a very uncomfortable mirror to look into.
It really is.
But that detective work is so crucial because those borrowed scripts often harden into permanent labels. The book goes deep into how casual comments from childhood they settle in like dust in the corners of our minds.
And they stay there.
Yeah, eventually becoming the absolute blueprint of our identity. Think about it for a second. You're 5 years old and someone calls you bossy just for speaking up on the playground. Or you're 10 and you're labeled too sensitive because you cry when something hurts. Or you're 16 and a teacher casually mentions you're not really math smart.
And as a child, you completely lack the psychological defenses to reject those labels.
You just take them as truth.
Exactly. You don't have the life experience to say, well, actually, I just have strong leadership skills.
Yeah.
You accept those adult observations as objective facts about your character.
Yeah.
You start describing yourself using that exact same language. And eventually those words shape not just how you see yourself, but how you allow the world to see you. They dictate the risks you'll take, the careers you'll pursue, and the rooms you feel you belong in.
Judy shares a deeply personal struggle with this exact phenomenon. She was haunted by the label inconsistent.
That's a heavy one.
It is. It wasn't something she consciously chose as a personality trait. It just settled in and took over. If she started a project and didn't finish it, that inner voice would chime in and say, "See? I'm inconsistent."
Reinforcing the script.
Exactly. If she couldn't stick to a rigid daily schedule, there it is again. It got to the point where she wasn't just acting inconsistently, she fully believed she was inconsistent at her core. Full stop. No wiggle room.
Wow.
And she writes about how that one single word just devoured her confidence, gave her a massive fear of commitment, and made her live in constant fear of failure.
It acts as a strict boundary on what she believed she was capable of achieving. That single word carried so much baggage. Guilt, shame, frustration.
Yeah.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe you are fundamentally inconsistent, your brain stops trying to find ways to be reliable, because that contradicts your established identity.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. She finally started paying attention to the pattern beneath that heavy label, and she had this huge pivot.
The reframe.
Yes, she realized she wasn't actually inconsistent at all. She was persistent.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, because even when it was hard, even when it was messy, she kept showing up to write. She might not have done it perfectly every day at 8 a.m., but she persisted in the mess. It just goes to show how labels compress a whole beautifully complex human story into a single, often damaging word.
That reframe from inconsistent to persistent is a masterclass in taking back agency over your identity. You're refusing to let an outdated word define your current reality. And this ties directly into how we have to find language that actually fits our true purpose.
Because the wrong words keep our purpose completely hidden.
Right. In the text, the author talks about her struggle to explain why writing mattered to her. She used to default to this very vague, almost apologetic phrase, "I like writing."
Which sounds like a hobby.
Exactly. It made it sound like a weekend hobby, downplaying the very thing that anchored her to the world. It wasn't until she shifted her language to something purpose-driven.
Saying things like, "This is how I reflect, this is how I serve."
Yes. That's when her purpose truly materialized. And from a psychological standpoint, this matters immensely. We often think of purpose as this grand, intimidating power suit with a rigid 5-year plan.
Right.
But it's almost always a quiet whisper, a gentle nudge, that only grows and takes shape when you finally give it the right name.
Giving the quiet whisper the right name, I think that's something we all struggle with, especially in today's world where we're practically trained to do the exact opposite.
Oh, absolutely.
We're taught to dress things up. The text dives into this idea of clarity over complexity and why we so often hide behind big, complicated words instead of just expressing ourselves authentically.
We constantly confuse complexity with credibility.
Yes.
We've internalized this idea that if we use larger words, we'll sound more certain, more intelligent, and less vulnerable to criticism.
The book calls out corporate jargon brilliantly here. I mean, we've all been in those meetings. We catch ourselves saying we need to synergize, or we tell our team we need to pivot the paradigm.
Pivot the paradigm.
And we all know it's not because we're being highly strategic. It's because plain English feels too naked.
It does.
Saying, let's change the plan because the old one failed, feels risky. So we dress up our sentences in jargon to avoid being vulnerable or admitting uncertainty. But the truth, the author points out, is that clarity is what people actually connect with.
Stripping away that jargon is uncomfortable, precisely because it leaves you exposed. There's nowhere to hide in plain language. To help with this, the author introduces a remarkably powerful writing exercise for distilling the truth.
I love this part.
It's a progressive reduction. You take a topic you want to communicate, and you first express it in 3 full paragraphs.
Which is usually where we feel safe, lots of room for caveats and fluff.
Exactly. But then, you force yourself to reduce those 3 paragraphs down to just 3 lines.
Which is already cutting a massive amount of that protective armor.
Right. And then comes the hardest part. You distill those 3 lines down into just 3 words.
3 words. That forces you to make some really tough choices about what you're actually trying to say.
It's highly effective. Every single time you reduce the word count, you're forced to let go of the ego, the overthinking, the need to sound smart, and the people-pleasing.
Yeah.
You have to focus entirely on the core intent. When you strip all that away, only the raw truth remains.
And that raw truth has immense power. The author proves this with the story of her 21-day poem challenge.
Oh, the poetry challenge.
Yeah, she challenged herself to write 21 poems in 21 days, just showing up every day to see what would come through without overthinking it. It started off as this messy, subconscious, completely unfiltered writing.
Unfiltered.
Yeah. She ended up compiling it and calling the collection Blessed in the Mess.
A very fitting title for work born out of vulnerability.
It really captures the spirit of the exercise. And to her complete surprise, that little book of raw, imperfect honesty went on to win the 21st Century Emily Dickinson Award by Bookleaf Publishing.
That's incredible.
It's living proof that you don't need perfect grammar or flowery, dramatic phrasing to reach people. In fact, that often gets in the way. Raw, imperfect honesty is what actually builds bridges to other people. The text emphasizes that we don't speak just to be heard, we speak to be understood.
That's a vital distinction. Speaking to be understood requires a level of emotional truth that polished jargon simply cannot carry. If you're just speaking to be heard, you can make as much noise as you want. But being understood requires you to drop the shield.
So what does this all mean when we take these internal realizations and apply them to our everyday conversations with the people in our lives?
That's the real test.
It is. The book transitions from our internal script into how we handle external communication, specifically tackling the illusion of I'm fine.
Surface talk.
Yeah.
It's the default setting for most of society.
Yeah.
We ask, how are you? And the other person says, I'm fine. Neither person really means it. Neither person expects the truth. Nothing really moves forward.
It fills the silence and it keeps things polite. And the author notes that surface talk isn't inherently evil. Sometimes you just need to buy a coffee without unpacking your childhood trauma with the barista.
Right. Context matters.
We need those social lubricants. But when I'm fine becomes your default mode for everything, especially with people you care about, it keeps you completely stuck.
Very stuck.
It avoids discomfort in the short term, but long term it leaves us feeling incredibly disconnected from the very people we want to be close to. We avoid honesty because we've convinced ourselves it's kinder to be agreeable.
Yeah.
But all that unspoken truth just builds pressure until we either explode at the wrong time or we just withdraw completely.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of relationship psychology, the book introduces a crucial concept right here. Acknowledging without attacking.
Yes.
There's a quiet skill in learning to navigate that tricky space between hiding your feelings completely and exploding with them. And the key realization the author brings up is that naming is not the same as blaming.
That's such a crucial shift to realize.
It changes everything. The author gives a very practical example of this difference. Naming the truth sounds like saying, this hurt me. Blaming sounds like saying, you're a terrible person.
Right. One is about your experience, the other is an attack.
Exactly. You can express anger, frustration, or hurt without crossing the line into cruelty. You can acknowledge your truth while still honoring the humanity of the person sitting across from you.
Yeah.
Real kindness is not the same thing as avoidance. Real kindness is firmly rooted in truth. And courage doesn't always look like a dramatic, cinematic confrontation. Very often, courage simply looks like gentle honesty. It's looking at someone and saying, I'm struggling with this, instead of pretending everything is perfect.
But man, that gentle honesty takes so much self-awareness, especially in the heat of the moment when your emotions are running high.
It's incredibly difficult.
And that brings us to one of the most practical and probably the most challenging sections of the source material. Managing the split second between a trigger and our response. The space between reacting and responding.
The physical and psychological reality of that split second is intense. It's the micro moment where an entire conversation can either deepen into true connection or completely derail into conflict.
The author had a huge realization about her own behavior in these high-stakes moments. She used to think she was just being clear and direct with people.
We all think that.
Right. But upon closer inspection, through that lens of awareness we talked about earlier, she realized her tone wasn't clear at all. It was sharp. She was snapping at people. Not because she meant to be rude or aggressive, but because she was reacting out of stress, fatigue, or just the overwhelm of carrying 10 other things in her mind.
When we don't acknowledge what's actually going on inside us, when we haven't done that morning pages kind of clearing, we end up speaking from the noise rather than from our truth.
Yeah.
And that noise manifests physically. When a comment lands the wrong way, your heart races, your palms might sweat, your nervous system kicks straight into fight or flight mode.
And when that physical reaction happens, the words just vanish.
Right.
Or we deploy defense mechanisms. The book points out how we throw up sarcasm as a shield to deflect the tension, or we just shut down entirely and pretend nothing happened while secretly stewing on the inside for days.
The urge to react quickly comes from the sheer discomfort of sitting with a difficult emotion. You want to discharge that physical tension immediately.
Yeah.
But the text makes a brilliant point. Just because a feeling is loud doesn't mean it has to lead the conversation.
That's powerful.
You can feel something strongly in your body without needing to say it strongly with your words.
To illustrate what this looks like in practice, the book brings up a really fascinating behavioral observation about a well-known public figure, Jordan Peterson.
Right.
Now, just to be incredibly clear to you listening, regardless of where anyone stands on his politics or social views.
Which isn't what we're looking at today.
Exactly. We are absolutely not endorsing any political viewpoints here. We are purely examining the communication technique highlighted in the text. The author points out a highly effective mechanical approach he takes to conflict.
Looking purely at the mechanics of the dialogue described in the book, the author observes how he handles highly pressurized, adversarial interviews. The observation is that when he's thrown incredibly sharp, aggressive, or loaded questions, his immediate physical action is to pause.
He literally leans back.
He does. He regulates his pace. He intentionally responds to the underlying question rather than reacting to the provocation of the moment.
It's that mechanical approach to conflict that Judy respects. The text points out that he doesn't fight noise with noise. He doesn't rush to desperately prove a point, and he doesn't try to talk over the other person to assert dominance.
No.
By taking that deliberate pause, he makes space for the truth to land. He speaks from inner clarity rather than getting hijacked by the outer chaos of the interview.
This raises an important question for you to ask yourself the next time you're in a tense conversation. Are you trying to connect, or are you just trying to convince?
That's a great question.
Do you actually want to be heard and understood, or do you just want to win the argument? Reactions are about winning, escaping, or defending. Responses are about understanding and connecting.
Yeah.
That intentional pause, that moment of grounding yourself physically and mentally, is what allows your words to match your actual intent. It shifts your tone from tension to trust.
It's the difference between an emotional explosion and emotional expression. It's holding space for the feeling while choosing your words with actual care.
And that takes immense practice, but it's entirely possible when you cultivate that initial awareness.
As we look at the entire journey of this deep dive today, the core synthesis is so incredibly powerful. Words aren't just the tools we use to describe our lives, they're the very materials we use to live it.
They really are.
We started by looking inward, noticing those borrowed voices and the dusty labels hiding in our daily self-talk, and learning the power of rewriting them from inconsistent to persistent.
The reframe.
We explored the absolute necessity of stripping away complicated jargon and dropping the protective illusion of "I'm fine" to find our authentic expression. And finally, we looked at the incredible power of the pause, learning to navigate the space between a trigger and a response so we can communicate with gentle honesty rather than sharp defensiveness.
If there's a direct application we can all take away from this, it's that you don't have to wait for perfect confidence, a flawless vocabulary, or a neat and tidy conclusion to start speaking your truth.
No, you don't.
Authentic communication doesn't demand perfection. It only asks for your presence. Show up honestly, even if your voice shakes, even if the words are a bit messy. The clarity you're looking for comes through connection, not through running faster or finding a bigger word to hide behind.
It's about letting your words carry the full weight of what you feel, not just what you think. And as we wrap up today's exploration, we want to leave you with one final lingering thought, something to mull over long after you finish listening.
Let's hear it.
We spend all this time establishing that the words we choose to speak and write actively construct our reality and forge our identity. Wait, let me rephrase that. So, what happens to the heavy truths and the fleeting thoughts that we actively choose never to put into words?
Oh, that's deep.
Do they simply fade away into nothingness? Or do those unnamed ghosts secretly become the strongest, most silent architects of our subconscious?
A fascinating question to carry with you.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the mind. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.